everybody. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Robert Garcia Unfiltered. This is our last episode of the year. We are going to be covering a few things on this episode. We're going to start off with fan questions. We allowed the fans to ask any questions that they want answered for this upcoming year. And then we're going to end it off with our end of the year awards. So this first question has two parts. Everybody knows that Showtime is coming to an end. Showtime Sports, Showtime Sports, in general. But after 37 years, Showtime Boxing is coming to an end. So this question is, out of all of the fights that you have been a part of in Showtime, which has been your favorite and why?
That's favorite fights on Showtime?
Or moment.
I think favorite fight on Showtime, I'd say Castillo versus Corrales, one is the best fight, not only in Showtime, but I think one of the best in history, but it was part of Showtime. So I think that's the best fight Showtime ever had in the history of Showtime boxing. Moment, I was on the same card when Tyson beat Evander Holyfield's ear off. Chavez Sr. was also on the card. I remember Tyson walking back to the locker room, his face, his eyes, he had the devil inside of him. And then after the fight, the casino riots, shootings, they shut down the casino. It was a moment that was scary, but it was a moment that we'll always remember. We were eating already, and when we start hearing shootings and just people just running, flipping the gambling tables, just the whole riot. We had to go under our table when we were eating, because that's where everybody was instructed, just go under your tables. So we went under the table. Then they shut the casino down. Everybody that had rooms in the MGM had to go to their room. Those that didn't, they had to leave the hotel because the casino was shut down. It's a moment. It was a scary moment, but it's a moment that we'll never forget. People that were involved. It was just one of those moments that you will never forget, and it was a scary moment. Other people that were not in that area, this was in the 90s, so a lot of people might have other memories that are going to be nice, that are going to make people smile. Mine was a scary moment. It was now that we talk about it, it was we laugh about it, but it definitely was something that I'll remember. Just the fact that when Tyson was walking out of the ring to the locker room, his eyes, his face, he had
he wanted to kill someone.
He had the devil inside of him. And after that in the casino and all that, it's a memory that will always stay with us, forever. Showtime, it was part of Showtime. And obviously the best fight, I think Castillo Corrales one was the best fight, one of the best of all times.
Yeah, I think my the best fight that I think I ever saw on Showtime was obviously Castillo Corrales. If I had to say like a memory of something we were a part of, I think that's what the question was. And you fought on the undercard of that, so you were there in person. I think I would have to say when Brandon won his world title. Obviously, I don't go as far back as you with a lot of the stuff. There was a lot of big fights that we were a part of on Showtime. Mikey fought a lot on Showtime and stuff. But I think when Brandon won his world title, it was something special. He had a really, really tough fight. I think like in the fourth round, he got hurt with the body shot. He was losing the fight, came back and stopped him. But I wasn't a part of like I wasn't working with you yet. We were just there with my mom and stuff. And we were sitting there and we're watching the fight as the fight starts to play out. Obviously, Brandon, somebody we've known since he was 18 years old, lived with us for a long time, and we saw him grow up and develop as a fighter, as a person, and everything, really, really close to the family. So watching the fight itself, I remember him getting hurt with the body shot and the way he was losing the first 4 or 5 rounds, and then he came back and was able to stop Acosta and win his world title. I think that was something really, really special. I would have to say that's probably my best memory of being a part of a fight on Showtime.
It was a great moment. Brandon becoming world champion, and where very few ever thought he would ever even make it to the top. Not only because he was just a brawler, one of those kids, but he also had a lot of personal issues outside of the ring, his just bad habits outside of the ring, just the way he was, discipline, stuff like that. I'm pretty sure a lot of boxing people, promoters, people that knew boxing probably never gave him a shot, and he became a champion, and he became a great fighter. He put up some of the great fights also, that people
I
are
was
always
trying to think of. I thought maybe some of his fights, but after that, the only one that was on Showtime, I believe, was Acosta. After that, he went kind of strictly to HBO. So like the Alvarado one wasn't, that was already HBO. Nonito did most of his stuff on HBO. Mikey early on was on HBO. So I think Dana was the only one that I kind of remember. Young.
Maidana's
Wasn't
Aidana
it-
Broner is one of them too. That was
was
also
that Showtime?
yeah, that was on Showtime. Maidana did his fights on Showtime and stuff, but those I think those that was probably the best. That was probably the best and biggest win we probably had on Showtime. But I think I don't know. I just remember being there, watching Brandon, sitting with my mom and Payo.
Brandon was like,
It was
like an older brother to you
Yeah.
guys. He grew up
yeah,
in the house.
that's it.
I was like 4 when
Yeah,
Brandon was
we were
already
all
living
we were all
there.
we were all young.
Yeah, so that's a great moment there, of course.
My favorite moment was with Mayweather and Maidana, because I actually went to to the first fight. So that was pretty cool. It was a whole new environment for me. All right, that kind of piggybacked with one of the other questions. How are you able to tackle your fighters, like to keep them on track?
How are we able to keep our fighters on track?
Yeah, because you were talking about Brandon having personal issues behind him.
Well, I think with every fighter in our gym, coming from different places of the world, from different states here in the United States, and just seeing the family, how, I'm working with my son, the rest of our kids, being very close to each other, my dad always in the gym. I think that already kind of makes them be like, we got to be careful with the way we act, what we do, what we say, just being
You kind of set the
around.
example. You kind of set the example.
That's like setting an example. So I think that's already like a big start. But then when it comes to the discipline and everything, well, if you have fighters like Virgil Ortiz or Bam Rodriguez or Jose Ramirez who are training in the gym, and you're there training with them, you don't want to be the one that takes the hammers off first and leaves, and because people are gonna get at you for doing that. So I think being in a gym where you have fighters like Virgil, Bam, Jose Ramirez that train extremely hard, I think that's just like an example. Then they see my dad, they see me, my son, they see that we're all, the whole family is part of the team. I think that helps. That has a lot to do with how we were able to give them that example. Then when it comes to fighting, obviously I have a really good relationships, a lot of great relationships with promoters out there, with local promoters here in Southern California, or with big time promoters, Matchroom, Top Rank, Golden Boy has, a few fighters, you know what I mean? It's just the relationships, being able to communicate with everybody, being able to work with everybody. Everybody in boxing knows the way we work. Everybody in boxing, says nothing but good things about the team. So all that together makes us, makes our fighters become, or try to be what we are, and that helps. That's a big plus right there. Having those relationships that we have, it's just something special.
All right, and then you mentioned Jose Ramirez. Someone wants to know, when can we expect to see him back in the ring?
You know what? Jose Ramirez will be back soon. Definitely the next 2 or 3 months. Big news coming soon. You guys will be hearing this in the next few days. I'm not the one to make the announcement, but you guys will hear a big announcement in the next few days, because it's not going to be the next few months. It's going to be the next few days. You guys will hear the big announcement, and he will be fighting again, the next 3 months. You guys will be seeing him fight early next year. So he'll be back, things went on in his career. He's had a great career. He became a world champion, a unified champion, fought for the undisputed title, didn't win the title, but it was a very close fight, and you know, had a great career. But this is gonna be like second chapter of his career. I think this is gonna be a little bit more motivation for him. He's one of the hardest working guys, and he's had that mentality of being great all the time. But this, you know, comes to a point where it's been the same. And this is the perfect moment for him because there's gonna be a big change. Like I said, people will hear the news in the next few days. And he's motivated to give it a second, like a second episode of his career, and it'll be big.
Awesome. And then someone else wanted to know, do you see any of your fighters fight for a world title in 2024?
You know what? In boxing, you never know. Sometimes the one that you least expect gets that title opportunity. But next year, I do see quite a few of my fighters fighting for the world title. I think Santillán will be fighting for the world title. You know, he's ranked #1 in the world. Crawford is the champion, but I don't see Crawford defending the title at 147 anymore, or if he does, maybe one time and then probably vacates the titles. So I think Santillán, ranked #1 in the world, he will get a title opportunity. I think he's one that deserves it and will get it. I think Raymond Murataya is one that is very close to maybe fighting for the world title. Maybe not in his next fight, but 2-3 fights from now, maybe by the end of the next year, he will be fighting for the world title. Hopefully sooner than that, because in boxing, you know, and he's in a position where he's very close. I think Virgil Ortiz can also fight for the title. I know 154. All the presidents at 154 would love to have him as you know, fighting for a world title. So he's one that could fight for a title next year. I think, you know, Bam obviously already a world champion, but he, you know, there's the plan is to move up back to 115, so he will get another title. If he fights at 115, he will be fighting for another world title. So you know, there's quite a few fights. I don't know if Pete has anybody in mind that I might be forgetting, or that I might not have brought up, that because we just have so many fighters, you know, that
you can't keep track of them.
Yeah, because sometimes I just, you know, don't.
I think those are the three. I think Giovanni is already, like you said, he's already in line. I don't think there's a question of whether he will or he won't be fighting for a title. Crawford's gonna be more than likely moving up in weight, and Giovanni's, you know, all three guys that you just mentioned are in similar situations where they're in weight classes where there was an undisputed champ recently. So as the champ vacates the titles, then you kind of see, you know, once the smoke clears, you kind of see who's going to get a shot at what belt and stuff. You know, obviously at 147, Crawford's the undisputed champ. He'll be moving up in weight. That gives Giovanni a shot. He's ranked #1. At 135, it was Devin Haney. He vacated all his titles. Now Raymond could potentially get a shot. I don't, you know, like you said, it might not be right away, but he's in line for the WBO, the IBF. He's in the top like 7 of those 2 titles. And then Virgil Ortiz at 154. You got Charlo, who's the champ at 154, but he just fought Canelo, and you know, with all the trouble that him and, you know, his brother and the whole family and stuff, it seems like they're, you know, it's a mess. He'll probably be vacating some of his titles pretty soon. I think he vacated most of them already. So Virgil could potentially be getting a shot at those. So I think those are the 3 guys that are kind of right there.
I think the other one that will fight for the title, because it's in the plan, it's already something that it's on the new contract he made, Jose Ramirez. Jose Ramirez will also fight for a title. You know, he's a former world champion, but I think he will
like
fight
Jose, Bam, and these guys who are already world champs. Those are kind of given, and not given, but you're kind of, you know, they were already world champs. Though the other 3, you know, since they haven't became champs, those are the 3 that we could probably expect. Yeah, I think Jose will, you know, obviously will be fighting for a title. Bam will be fighting for more titles and stuff, but then those 3 are the ones that haven't had a title shot yet.
It could be.
That's crazy.
That would be nice.
Busy year. All right, next question. Oh wait, no, I already asked that. What breakout fighters do you see popping out in 2024?
Man, there's so much talent in boxing right now. Just like when you talk about pound for pound lists, everybody has a different list, and everybody's list is really good. So there's so much boxing that we should have two in each weight, in each number. Two in number one, two in number two, two in number three, because there's so much, and young fighters too. They're I think with fighters that we have that I have in my team. I think Arturo Cardenas and Albert Gonzalez already had an opportunity a couple weeks ago, and they showed what they could do. But there's still 6 and 8 rounds. But I think next year will be something big for them. I think next year will be a year where the people, the boxing world will start noticing them, start talking about them, because they are those kids that are gonna make something, that are gonna be something special, that have a special a bright future. I think another one, obviously not with us, but Emiliano Vargas. I think next year he'll be moving up to 8 rounds, getting closer to the 8s and 10s. I think he's another one that's gonna make a lot of noise, and he already is very popular. His fights are all on ESPN, fighting for Top Rank. So all that has helped him, get so much recognition, and people started talking about him and recognizing him. With the ones that we have that I just mentioned, they could be as good, but they've been fighting on our cards. We do our own cards where there's no TV. We take them to Mexico where there's no TV. They're just small shows. So we've had those kids, with Toscano Promotions, on small cards, nothing big. So people haven't really seen them. So I think that they'll make a big like statement when they're shown all over the world. Emiliano's won, but he's already been shown all over the world. Everybody already knows who he is. Everybody sees the talent, and everybody talks about him being the next superstar, which he will. But there is a lot of younger fighters that maybe haven't had that exposure, maybe haven't had that opportunity, but they could be as good. So there's quite a few out there.
What other ones do you think could be?
I think we obviously, this is the perfect question leading into our end of the year awards, because the end of the year awards that we have Prospect of the Year on there. We have obviously fighter, a bunch of stuff, but Prospect of the Year, what we don't bring up is kind of like that middle kind of contender going in, or prospect going into contender, because our Prospect of the Year list, it has to be 8 rounds and less. I don't think we could consider somebody fighting 10 rounds a prospect. So like Andy Cruz can be considered, Floyd Schofield. There's a lot of good 10-round fighters, Raymond Morataya, Bruce Carrington, who ended the year in a 10-round fight, who I don't think those guys can be considered prospects anymore, because once you get to that 10 round, I think you're already kind of a contender. You're not ranked, in the top 5, for a title, but you're somewhere 15 and up. That's already a contender. That's not a prospect. So I think breakout fighter of the year is somewhere in between that, and I would give it to Bruce Carrington. I think Bruce Carrington is somebody who isn't getting the recognition yet. Little by little, you start to kind of see his fame and popularity kind of growing. With the performances that he's been having. This past year, he fought. He's fighting 8 rounders at the beginning of the year, and I think at the end of the year he fought his first 10 rounder, and I think he had one of his best performances. So I think Bruce Carrington is one of the ones that's going to be a breakout. By this time next year, he'll be talked about the way Keyshawn Davis is, the way Raymond Morataya, the way Floyd Schofield, the way William Cepeda, the way a lot of these guys, and I think that makes him a breakout. I still think Emiliano, when we get to the prospects, obviously Emiliano's going to be one of those guys. I think next year he'll still be considered. He'll still be fighting 8 rounds. He won't be taking that big leap the way I think Bruce Carrington will. I think Carrington will go next year. Will go from prospect to solidified contender next year, and he'll be one of the top guys mentioned next year at featherweight.
All right, and like you said, this leads up to our end of the year awards. Our first award is going to be Prospect of the Year. Do you want to say
I think like I was explaining earlier, I think we go with guys who aren't fighting 10 rounds, so it has to be 8 rounders and down. I believe that once you fight 10 rounds, you're like I said, you're considered a prospect. There was a lot of good fighters that could have been on the list. The way I said earlier, Andy Cruz, Keyshawn Davis. I don't think this year maybe, but Elijah Garcia had a few good wins this year, big pay-per-view cards and stuff. But all those guys fight 10 rounds now. Xander Sayas. So we didn't consider them. I think the only 2 that you could really say have a case are Emiliano Vargas and Abdullah Mason. And my pick is Abdullah Mason. I think that kid is probably the most talented kid I see under, fighting, less than 10 rounds. I think he's way ahead of, for his age, he's way ahead of, a lot of other kids his age. I believe he should already be fighting 8 rounds at least. He's still fighting 6 rounders, but I would pick Abdullah Mason.
I think I'm gonna go with Emiliano because when it like Peter's saying, when it comes to talent and all that, Mason is special. He's special, but I think Emiliano just made more noise. It was a lot more popular. People go to see him. People get excited when it. So I think for that reason, and he's also very talented. He's got great power, great family behind him. I think everything put together, I think for me, that makes him prospect of the year because yes, obviously talent and stuff like that means a lot. Well, he's very talented too. They both have different styles. They both fight different. But I think Emiliano, just his wins, the opponents, talking shit and him backing it up and knocking them out. I think all that, the attention, the fans paid to go watch him fight. I think that makes him prospect of the year. In my list, I think he is prospect of the year.
Mhm. All right, moving up to upset of the year. What fights did you guys have for upset of the year?
Upset of the year, we had obviously the end of the year, Rafael Espinosa's big win over Robeisy Ramirez, taking the WBO featherweight title away from him. We had Brian Mendoza, La Bala, knocking out Fundora here at the StubHub Center. You had the Joseph Parker unanimous decision win over Deontay Wilder, winning every single round. I think one of the ones that wasn't talked about as much because they're 105 pounders, but Adrian Curiel had a knockout win for the IBF world title in Monte Carlo. He's a huge underdog against sorry if I mispronounced the last name, Nonchinga. I can't pronounce it. He was the IBF. I believe last year his trainer was even Nonchinga, something like that. Last year his trainer was nominated by the Boxing Writers Association for Trainer of the Year because he had a few really, really good wins. He was in a Fight of the Year contender also to win his IBF world title. And this year he was making a defense of his title in Monte Carlo. And Adrian Curiel from Mexico City came in and upset him. So those are the 4 fights that we have listed for upset of the year, but I would give it to maybe it's just recency bias, but I give it to Rafael Espinosa beating Robeisy Ramirez. Recency bias, and then he's a Mexican fighter. The way he celebrated his win.
I love how he's celebrating. He's giving back to his community.
Everything that after the win that happened afterwards as well, like the way they received him in his hometown, all the stuff that happened after. It just, I believe that's my, upset of the year.
Did you guys see him singing to his parents?
Yes, he's actually really good at that too. He wrote that song, and oh yeah, I bet you he's made a lot of people cry listening to that song because it's a good touching song. I also give it to him. He was an underdog. Nobody expected him to win.
He got hurt.
Those fights that even his own people around him, his own promoters, don't think they have a chance. Obviously, now they're really happy, and not that they're that they're not they didn't have faith in him. They just it's just the way it is. Sometimes you just the underdog, and it's so big against you. So big of a difference that very few give you a chance. This kid never gave up. He believed in himself, and I think that's the upset of the year. The way he did it, he was hurt, he was dropped pretty bad, came back. The other ones, they were pretty good fights. Then you land a great shot and knock your opponent out. Great, you that's a great upset. But with Divino,
adversity,
honestly. The ref, I said it before. I give a lot of credit to the ref because other refs could have stopped the fight and nobody would have complained. After he got up and still went falling against the ropes, this ref was great, did a great job, gave him that opportunity, title fight, and then to go out there and do what he did and become champion, that's definitely for me, without a doubt, upset of the year.
All right, moving on to trainer of the year. Which ones were the options for trainer of the year?
I think there was very few. I think there was trainers that had good years. And most of the time, when people have voted for trainer of the year, they give it to a trainer who had just the one fighter, or who had, they give, Freddie Roach won it a bunch of times, and it was mainly because of Pacquiao's big wins. I think this is, a year where it's tied to fighter of the year, except Bomac also had, besides Crawford, he also had Chris Eubank having a big win in the UK. So I think he kind of separates himself from Shingo Inoue, who's Inoue's father and trainer. Like I said, Freddie Roach won it a bunch of times with just like, Manny Pacquiao. I believe Abel Sanchez, won it because of Triple G. What was Andre Ward's trainer's name? Virgil Hunter? No, yeah, Virgil Hunter. Yeah, Virgil Hunter won a trainer of the year one year because, just because of Andre Ward. I think Bomac and Shingo Inoue were similar, where they had the one fighter, but Bomac also had Chris Eubank. And then I also put, obviously I put my dad, I put you, where it wasn't just the one fighter, it was a group of fighters who had big wins, big upset wins, underdog wins, or in fights that were supposed to be close, like Bam versus Sonny Edwards, that was the big win of the year. You also had Raymond Murataya in a tough prospect, fight against Torres, both undefeated prospects on their way up, and the way Raymond dominated that. Alexis Rocha was a big favorite against Giovanni Santillan. Giovanni Santillan gets the big upset, and then Lindolfo Delgado, and there's more fighters that had big wins. But if I had to pick the one, I'm going with Bomac this year. I think he deserves it. Crawford had the big win, but again, he also had Eubank, who had the big win in the UK. So I think this year, we give it to Brian McIntyre, Bomac.
I do the same. I think just I don't even think we have to include the other fight with what is it, Eubank, because I think his performance, the game plan, fighting, it was a 50-50 fight. Some people pick Spence, other people pick Crawford, so that meant it was a 50-50, 60-40 either
That's
way.
as close as a fight to get, is going in.
The way they did it, obviously a lot of credit to Crawford, but a lot of credit to his trainer. I think the trainer has a lot to do with the way they perform, the game plans, instructions during the fight, in the corner, all that. I think that for that also, I think the win was just so big and just so dominant that Bomac should get it. In my books, I think I gave it to Bomac too.
Who do you think is in position to be trainer of the year next year?
That's tough to decide. That's tough to pick. I think well, we'll talk about it right now, because we're gonna give our predictions for next year. We're not gonna include trainer of the year, but I'll give my answer to what you said right now, because of of something else. We'll talk about it.
So next one is fighter of the year. Everybody knows Pitas, Crawford and Inoue.
I think it's Crawford. I think it's down to Crawford and Inoue, but I also wanted to throw in there Devin Haney, who had a big year. He had two really good wins. And David Benavides. Benavides and Haney both fought, in two marquee fights. You could say, obviously, pay-per-view, and Haney fought Lomachenko on a big pay-per-view fight, in a really, really competitive fight that a lot of people had Loma, a lot of people had Haney. It was a close fight. Then he comes back and then he completely dominates Regis Prograis the way he did. So I think Devin Haney has to get a mention in there. David Benavides had the two big pay-per-view fights with Demetrius Andrade and Caleb Plant. Dominating both of them, beating Caleb Plant decision, but, putting a beating on him and then stopping Demetrius Andrade. But I think it really comes down to Inoue, and it comes down to Terence Crawford. And my fighter of the year, I give it to Inoue just because of the two fights that he had. Crawford, while I still believe, and I still have him as my number one pound for pound fighter in the world. I think he's the best fighter in the world. But this year, I give it to Inoue. Him becoming a two-time undisputed champ, the way Crawford is, but Inoue is doing it like in his fifth division already. It's like his fifth division. The fight with Stephen Fulton should have been a tough fight for him. Completely dominated him. Obviously, the way Crawford did to Errol Spence as well. But then he had the finisher against Marlon Tapales to make him two-time undisputed. So I give it to Naoya Inoue.
I've said it, and it's a tough one. It's a close one, but I give it to Crawford. He fought a top 3, 4 pound for pound fighter in the world. Like I said again, the fight was supposed to be so close, and he made it so easy for himself. I give it to Crawford. That's my pick, and I think a lot of people are not going to disagree, and a lot of people are not going to disagree with Pita, because right now at this time,
I
some
think those
people.
are the two.
Yeah, those are the two. I think some people pick Inoue as number 1 pound for pound. Others pick Crawford, and so I
can't
think
go
same
wrong.
thing. I think same thing. Nobody goes wrong. I pick Crawford. His performance was just unbelievable. It was just one of those performances that nobody expected, nobody thought, and the way he did it, that for me, that's fighter of the year right there.
And now moving on to fight of the year. Which
Fight
ones did you? Yeah.
We had 4 for fight of the year, with a few honorable mentions. I believe Munguia versus Derevchenko was up there for fight of the year. Munguia was hurt a lot in that fight, came back and got the win. Luis Pantera Neri versus Asa Hovhannisyan. If action, the whole fight, there was never a dull moment in that fight. I believe Rafa Espinosa versus Robesi Ramirez has to be up there, with the way Rafa Espinosa was dropped and hurt, came back and won. Same for Navarrete when he fought Wilson. The same thing. Navarrete was dropped and hurt, came back and won. Honorable mention, I wanted to say, we didn't have a round of the year, but if we did, I think we would have given it to O'Shaquie Foster versus Rocky Hernandez. I don't think the fight itself, the whole fight, could be considered something like a fight of the year, but that round is definitely round of the year. And then 2 more for honorable mention, fights that were more, I want to say more tactical, obviously Neri, Espinosa, Munguia, Navarrete, these guys, you're talking about all action, just going in there and, kind of, give and take. You get hit, I get hit. We're going back and forth, dropping each other, hurting each other. But if you want to go skill with added to that, I would add Haney and Loma, and then Bam versus Sunny Edwards. I think those 2 fights were high skilled, high level fights. Not saying that the other guys aren't. There was just a little bit more defense, more, you know what I mean? It wasn't just all action, just dropping each other and stuff. So those guys are kind of honorable mention. But from the 4 that I mentioned at the beginning, I would give it to Luis Neri versus Asa Hovhannisyan, just in terms of just brutality, just action, the whole fight, rock'em sock'em robots, from that kind of perspective, I would have to give it to Luis Neri versus Asa Hovhannisyan.
Well, that's what fight of the year is.
Yeah.
All action fight,
Yeah, but I think a few years ago, unless let me try to think of what fight it was. It was, I think it was, no, not even a few years, probably like 10 years ago. I think it was Marquez versus Pacquiao, the 4th fight, where it wasn't, there was knockdowns in the fight, but it wasn't, rock'em sock'em, just, Brandon versus Alvarado type. It was kind of, but because it was at such a high level, and then the way it ended and stuff, I think that fight got fight of the year. Got fight of the year one year, and that's not the type that you would assume like, oh, that should be a fight of the year. Yeah, they, Marquez dropped them, and then the rest of the fight, they're kind of, it's not, you know what I mean? It's a little bit different than Brandon versus Alvarado, and the way we think about it. That's the only reason I wanted to mention those guys, because I think those guys, deserve. Haney versus Lomachenko was a great fight. Bam versus Sunny Edwards, a great fight, but these other guys are they're a little bit.
I also think Neri versus Assad was fight of the year. That was a great
I
fight.
didn't see that fight.
Oh my God, it's a great fight. It was a great fight. Hard to because it wasn't in the same level of fight as Divino, becoming champion the way he did, getting hurt, almost being knocked out, and that's also but he already got upset of the year.
Yeah.
So fight of the year, I do think Neri and Assad was fight of the year. It was a great fight. If you haven't seen it,
I need
you gotta
to
go
see
back
it.
and watch it because it was a great fight. Back and forth. They went at it good.
I'm gonna watch it after this.
Yes, you do.
All right, and then last but not least, the knockout of the year. Can I just say mine really quick? I put Rayo and then Junto Nakatani against Andrew Maloney.
So which one's yours?
I like both of them.
Well, you said, can I say mine first?
Well, those are tied. Those are
Okay,
tied.
so
Those are
say,
tied.
yeah, have a time.
Actually, no, I think I'm gonna have to go with Rayo just because of the history that they had and then the way it ended and the picture he put. So I think
Knockout of the year. There was a few too,
Yeah.
because man, that
We
was
had
that was
we had Zhang versus Joyce. Adrian knockout in the third round. We had Adrian Curiel KO2. We were just talking about that fight where he had the big upset in Monte Carlo. Rayo Valenzuela KO in the 6th round of Chris Colbert. Junto Nakatani knocking out Maloney in the 12th, and then La Bala Mendoza knocking out Fundora in the 7th. And I would pick Junto Nakatani. I think if you show somebody, if you want to show somebody that's never watched boxing in their life a knockout where you're gonna get the biggest reaction out of them, I think you show them Nakatani and Maloney. The way he fell, the impact that his shot had, the way he put him on his back, I think it was the most devastating knockout of the year. While I do think Rayo Valenzuela had a great knockout, the way Bala Mendoza had a great knockout and stuff, I just think the way he walked into it, Junto dipped a little bit, let him walk right into that left hand. I think like I said, if you have somebody that's never watched boxing before, you want to get the biggest reaction out of somebody, I think that's the one you show them, Junto Nakatani.
I think the other one that you got to show if Pita, the way you're saying it, man. I think if people go and watch the Fundora,
that
I
was
think
a
that's
crazy.
probably
How big he is,
or even better.
Yeah.
Come on, that shit was as good or even better, man. That was
That
a
was
fucking
crazy.
badass knockout right there too, and it was
How big he is, how big that dude is.
underdog,
Oh my God.
all that, but I don't know. I think just, a knockout, the way he just put him to sleep, I say Rayo, man.
Right?
Because of all, just one punch and put him to sleep, completely out to a point where Rayo even had time to pose and clown him around with that shit.
That was fun.
That's
That was fun.
that's
Crazy.
that's badass. That's knockout right there of
That's
the
what
year
people tune
for
in
me.
to see.
That's knockout of the year for me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, well, that was it for this awards. Going into 2024, what are 3 matchups that aren't finalized right now that you guys are hoping to see next year?
We only have to talk about one.
Okay. talk about one.
I think one that we fucking need to see, and it better happen. And I don't think it's gonna happen. It's Canelo versus David Benavidez. That shit needs to happen, and I don't see it happening.
Really?
I don't see that fucking fight happening.
see
My
it
dad's
happening.
my dad's being real negative about that fight here. I don't think
But you know why? You know why? Because Canelo has the power to say, I don't want to please nobody.
but if
Okay,
that's
well,
the
let me
problem.
tell you.
Shit.
He's accomplished more than any other Mexican. He's done much more, and people are gonna say we're exaggerating or we're lying about it. No, Canelo has done more. People just Mexicans just don't like him as much.
Mhm.
That's the only difference. But he's done much more than any other Mexican. He's the first ever Mexican undisputed. He's the first to ever win a title at light heavyweight and so and so. And I don't even know how
First
many
middleweight, I believe. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that he's accomplished.
a lot of stuff where he's the best.
Mhm.
The another way, business wise, he's been the best, the biggest. There's never going to be one like him that could make the money that he's making,
Yeah.
the investments he's making. All that has to be part of his career. All that is part of his career. He's had a great career, but he's at a point where he's going to say, "Fuck everybody." Hey,
I do what
I
I
call the
want.
shots. I do what I want. That fight is not happening.
I
That fight,
still see
I
it
don't see that fight
in
happening.
September. It's still gonna be in I say it's gonna be September. Third fight with
I think that's the one fight I think anybody has to have on their list. But if we want to say 3, I would also add Devin Haney versus Gervonta Davis. I think Tank versus Gervonta is
Oh, it's not Javante anymore.
Oh yeah, no, I mean Tank versus Haney. Tank versus Haney. I said Tank. See, I didn't say his name anymore because he's not. He changed his name. Tank versus Haney. Is the fight to make at 140 pounds. I think that's that's probably the best fight. When with if we're talking about,
I also want to see Bam versus Gallo.
so I was gonna say that. I was gonna say, Bam versus Gallo, we're involved. That would be involving us. So I think that's too, that's yeah, a little too close. Another one is that I think I would want to see is obviously Fury versus Usyk. We were gonna say that's already lined up. That's already lined up. So we won't add that one to the list. But I would also like to see David Benavidez and Morrell. If we're talking about Beterbiev, Bivol is up there. There's a lot of them. Bam versus Sonny. There's a lot of really, really good fights that I think could be made.
Sonny already happened.
I mean, Bam versus Gallo. My bad. Bam versus Gallo. You just said, what did you just say, Ryan?
Beterbiev.
Bivol. There's a lot of matchups that you could just go back and forth. But if I had to pick 3, I would pick Canelo Benavidez. I would pick Haney versus Tank, and I will pick David Benavidez versus Morrell. I would hope it happens till after, because as good as Morrell is, I would hate for him to be the one that fucks up Canelo versus Benavidez, because he's that good, but he's just not as he's not as popular. The excitement going into a fight, like let's say Morrell fights Benavidez early in the year, and Morrell was to beat him. If Morrell would fight Canelo, there'd be no excitement going into that fight, just because Morrell doesn't have a big fan base. He's not a big star. I think Benavidez versus Canelo is the biggest fight to make, the best fight to make, the best atmosphere. I think it would be similar to Oscar De La Hoya versus Fernando Vargas, something like that. The young guy, the established guy, one Mexican American, one Mexican, one a little bit more, Benavidez more brash and cocky, and Canelo, I think that would be the biggest one. But if you talk about just a fight that you want to watch, I think Benavidez and Morrell is as good as a fight as we could make in boxing. The southpaw power puncher Morrell has great angles. Benavidez' speed and power. I think I don't see another fight in terms of just all action that could probably be better than that one.
Do you think there's any fights like that? Like you're talking, putting what's his name, Subriel against one of the top 40 pounders that is going to be that kind of fight?
I think Subriel versus Teofimo would be insane.
Right? Yeah, Teofimo.
Subriel versus Teofimo would be insane. Teofimo does not back down from anybody. You can say whatever you want about his loss to Kambosos. So he got hurt was the first round where he got dropped. He was all bloodied up by the time the fight ended, but he comes back and drops Kambosos late in the fight. The way he fought Lomachenko, in for such a young age, the confidence he had in that fight, the way he was dominating, he lost like 4 straight rounds, and then came back in the 12th round was probably his best round. I don't think that Teofimo backs down from anybody, and him versus Subriel would be an insane fight too. So I would say the 3 I mentioned, but if you want to mention like an honorable mention, Bam versus Gallo Estrada, but obviously that's us. I don't want to bring that one into it. And then Subriel Matias versus Teofimo. That would be sick.
That'd be crazy.
How about against Inoue? Who would you want? Like, is there any fight right now that at around 122, 126 that will put everybody excited about? Maybe not. Right?
Not at that level. But any fight with him at 126 would be crazy. Like, imagine Inoue versus Venado Lopez.
Oh yeah.
Imagine Inoue versus Brandon Figueroa.
Yeah.
Inoue versus Pantera Neri at 122. Those are all really good fights. Yeah, I think that one's next. That one's probably gonna happen next. There's a lot of big fights for Inoue. There's a lot of big fights that you could line up for him. Crawford, I believe Crawford next year ends up, maybe fighting Charlo. I think that would be a big one. I'll be looking forward to that one, especially with the stuff that just came out about Charlo and the allegations against him being locked up. I would love to see Terence Crawford beat the shit out of him. That would be a good one. I think Terence Crawford will beat the shit out of him worse than Canelo did, because Canelo plays a little bit safer. He fights a little bit smarter. He's more, obviously hits a lot harder. But Crawford's gonna go in there. He's gonna try to beat the shit out of Charlo, and I would love to see that. So I think that's the one we get for Terrence Crawford.
I'm getting excited now. All right, well, that was it for
Oh,
everything.
no, we were gonna
Wait,
talk
wait.
about you brought it up earlier about if you had to pick, who do you think going into 2024 would be your prospect and fighter of the year next year?
Man, going into next year, prospect and fighter of the year.
Prospect and fighter of the year. And like we said, prospect can't be somebody that's fighting 10 rounds yet. So if you think they're gonna be in 10 rounders by next year, then you can't add those guys.
Wow, then it's pretty hard because you could have some of the young fighters that maybe turn pro this year, that by next year they'll be fighting 6 and 8 rounds. So that's a tough one. There's a lot of young prospects. You know, we don't mention our fighters, right? Because we have some young ones that huh?
You can.
And if you want.
Oh, I think Cardenas will be fighting 10 rounds, so we don't count him. Maybe Chop, Art Barrera, there's because they're barely getting started. They're barely doing 4 and 6 round fights. So, I don't know. I can't think of anybody right now from another camp, another promotion that's probably pushing somebody so hard that could be.
Maybe Carmel.
Oh, yeah, there you go, Carmel. There you go.
That's
See
what I
it.
was gonna.
Thanks for reminding me.
That's what I was gonna say.
Carmel's probably one that will probably be up there to maybe, but he might be close to fighting 10 rounds by then because they're keeping him busy.
That was fighting
Didn't
4
Mayweather
rounds
want
still,
to
6
fight for a
rounds.
world title in his first fight?
That was tripping.
Mayweather said he would beat somebody. Well,
Yes, but he just says that.
yeah.
He just says that.
Okay,
I was gonna pick
okay.
Carmel, but he's not gonna be fighting 10 rounds by the end of the year.
How do you know?
Nah.
You know.
Nah, right now he's not even
Mayweather
gonna fight.
world title.
He's probably not even gonna fight till March because they have that thing with PBC going to Amazon, and they said their first fight is gonna be till March. And who knows if it's not the first date, he'll probably fight like in April or something, 6 rounds. But I was gonna pick
I'm
Carmel.
just saying because they said his first fight he could beat a world champion already.
Yeah, nah, they're tripping. I think I would pick Carmel Moen if I had to pick. What about fighter of the year going into 2024?
Fighter of the year.
And think about it, because which fights like this year, Inoue is probably this year's fight of the year, and Crawford probably this fight of the year. If Crawford fights next year, and let's say he does the same thing, let's say he does something similar to this year, he fights once and or maybe twice, he fights the rematch with Errol Spence. You have to think, like, who do you potentially think they're gonna end up fighting next year? So, like, let's say Crawford fights Errol Spence, and then he fights Charlo. Inoue, they're saying he's gonna fight Pantera Neri, and he's gonna fight MJ. You got David Benavidez. Who knows who he's gonna fight at the beginning of the year? But let's say he finishes it off with Canelo. Let's say he finishes it off with Canelo, and he, either whoever wins that one. Like, let's say Canelo at the beginning of the year fights Charlo, and then he fights Benavidez. Fury and Usyk are fighting each other. There's a lot of stuff.
Too. Canelo fights Munguia in May, and then fights. How do you know? I'm just saying.
If you fight no, stop it.
Okay, no, but you just said
If Canelo fights Munguia in May, he's automatically banned from any fucking list for fighter of the year, fighter of the decade, for fighter of anything. If he starts fighting Munguia next year,
you're just mentioning Crawford fighting Spence again.
They have a rematch clause.
Yeah,
That's the only reason. I wouldn't want to see it.
Maybe Munguia and Canelo have had a contract signed for 10 years.
Nothing.
But hold on. He fights him in May, and then he fights Benavidez in September.
The Benavidez one would be big. Huge.
So 2 big wins would probably put him at fighter of the year.
Okay.
Win against Benavidez.
Why are you so against it, Pita?
Well, Beba, why would you want that to happen? Who the fuck wants to watch Canelo versus Munguia?
Why not? 2
Who the
Mexicans.
hell wants to watch that? That doesn't matter. Who the hell would want to watch Canelo versus Munguia fight? Nobody does.
Man, I would watch it.
Yeah, we'll watch it, but nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. The only thing we want for Canelo is Benavidez.
If the next
Benavidez in May,
Benavidez, why not? I would want to watch.
We want Benavidez in May, and then the rematch in September. That's all we fucking want. That's all anybody wants for Canelo. That's it. Nobody wants to watch him fight Munguia. Nobody wants to watch him fight Charlo. Nobody wants to watch him fight Terrence Crawford. Those are not competitive fights. Him versus Benavidez, that's it. So what I was saying is, all these guys, you have to think of the potential of who they could end up lining up with, who they could fight. What are the odds that they fight? Like, Gervonta, Tank. I mean, do you think he's gonna fight Devin Haney? Haney, Haney had a good year. What if next year he fights? I don't know. He fights still right. He's gonna fight Ryan Garcia. Never mind. He's off the list. He's off the list.
Why?
He's off the list. Bam. What if he does? What if he's able to get Gallo Estrada in July and he finishes off the year against Ioka and he beats both of them? You know what I mean? Like, or you have to think of potentially who they might fight and who my pick for fighter of the year next year is David Benavidez because I think Canelo fights him and I think he's gonna beat the shit out of him.
I feel like the way Inui is
I don't think
going,
they're gonna fight. Inui doesn't have the opponents to make him fighter of the year.
No, not next year.
He's gonna fight Nady and then
He's
MJ.
gonna stay at his weight class.
Fighter of the year
He's gonna
type
stay at his
of.
weight class. He's not gonna fuck. Imagine he moves up to featherweight, becomes undisputed next year. That would be sick. A third undisputed. Then you have that. But he's not gonna do it. He's gonna fight, stay at 112, 122, and just make defenses. Even though they're good defenses, Nedy and MJ, those are good defenses. But if you have the potential of Bam versus Gallo and Ioka, fucking, Devin Haney fighting Teofimo, Ryan, Tank, all these, a bunch of, then I don't think Inoue will be on the list. But if I have to predict who I think is going to be the fighter of the year next year, I think it's going to be Benavidez, and because I think he's going to be Canelo at the end of the year.
I don't think that fight's gonna happen. Honestly, I don't think that fight's gonna happen. I already said it, and I think,
I hate how negative you are about that fight.
We'll be talking about it at the end of the next year. Either Benavidez is fighter of the year, or it never happened. That it just never happened, and everybody's gonna be mad. But I think potential fighter of the year that I think will happen. Bam fights Gallo, and then we go after Ioka, or maybe what's
Puma Martinez.
The from Argentina, or but he, that's what we're looking for. Bam, Gallo in July or August, because that's the word. That's what Match has been telling us. And then December against Ioka, or any of the other, we're going to Japan.
damn.
Or any of the other champions, the guy from Argentina, ¿cómo se llama? El Puma. So I think that beating two champions, getting titles like that, I think that puts him at least to be nominated as fighter of the year.
And he'll be the number one.
There's a lot of those guys that we were mentioning right now.
You could say
25.
You could say under 24 because he's not gonna be 25 yet.
Oh,
Yeah.
He's not.
He's gonna be 24.
Huh?
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah, he'll be 24 in January. Yeah, you have the potential of a lot of great stuff next year. This year was we were talking about it at the gym a few days ago, where I don't remember the last time we had a year like this in boxing, where not just pay-per-view, not just like a few big pay-per-view fights. We had big pay-per-view fights. We had great fights at almost every weight class. Almost every weight class had something going on, had unifications, had big performances, had big knockouts. The only one, honestly, that didn't have something like special to it this year was the heavyweight division.
But even the last show they had wasn't.
Yeah, but there wasn't like, it was supposed to be all one-sided, knockouts for the heavyweight. They were setting up, imagine this year on top of the year we had. Let's say AJ and Wilder would have fought, and Fury versus Usyk. Like, we would have had a year where it's probably the best year of all time in boxing if those two heavyweight fights would have happened. But the heavyweights were really probably the only ones that kind of stayed without any big fights, any big moves, nothing really in the heavyweight division. None of the top four guys really fought each other. Fucking Fury fought Ngannou for in a fucking exhibition or whatever that was. They were the only ones that didn't. But besides them, every other weight class that you could think of, there was either like a rising guy that you're like, holy shit, or unifications, or like big fights in most of the weight classes. I think we had a really, really big year. I think hopefully
next year even as good or even better, because there's so many fights out there that should happen, and I think we might see a lot of them. There's one that we're not going to see, but I think there's going to be so many that we're going to see.
What I think happened was this year everybody started to see like I think Tank and Ryan started it. You got to give them their credit for that, where they fought each other and they showed how much money they generated. And the rest of the guys are like, shit, if I really want to make that kind of money, you got to take those risks. You see Devin Haney going from promoter to promoter, taking on the biggest fights possible, the toughest challenges. You know, you see the way, you know, the younger guys like Bam, Delfimo, the way these guys are moving, and you know the challenges they're taking. It's kind of setting the example for a lot of these guys. So you know, I think next year we're gonna see a lot of those big fights, and that's what the fans want to see. You know, Ryan and Tank showed that, Crawford and Spence showed that. When you make the fights happen that the fans want to see, you know, you generate the money, you know, and you get these big events. You know, we're already gonna start off the year with Tyson Fury versus Usyk. That's a big fight. Hopefully we get Bivol versus Beterbiev. You know, Bam could fight Sonny. Hopefully Haney and Tank happens. Hopefully Canelo Benavides. There's a bunch of fights that can happen next year. And you know, keep the momentum going for next year. Now hopefully it does, because you know, there's a potential for a huge year again next year.
Definitely.
All right, well, that was it for this episode. Thank you guys for tuning in. I just want to say thank you guys for having me on the show, because I still get nervous with you guys, but I do feel the improvement in my interview. So thank you guys. But yeah,
Last year we did our last show like in August, because it was right like when you left with AJ, and we started having problems with being able to get you on the to record while you were in Saudi Arabia and stuff. It got a little bit difficult. And then we just completely stopped. After that was last August,
over
right?
a year. You guys went over a year without
Yeah,
doing
we went like a year without doing it, and then you started hitting us up. You're like, hey, from you know, I'm going to college for this and that, and you know, I want to improve my interviewing skills and this and that. So you know, that's why we started doing it again. But
Well, wish everybody
safe and happy New Year's.
happy New Year's. You know, there's a lot to come next year, so hopefully
Stay tuned.
everybody stays tuned.
All right, well, there you have it, guys. Have a good one.